Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r// Tales from Tech Support. In today's episode, where is the password? Or when security goes wrong. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Where is the password? Or when security goes wrong. Today, dear readers, I come to you with a cautionary tale. Up until May this year, I was employed by a point-of-sale IT company. The vast majority of our clients were restaurant chains. So when the world turned upside down, they all closed. When they closed, they stopped paying for services we weren't rendering. This resulted in furloughs. Each department had to make cuts, and I drew the short straw. When matters didn't improve in a timely fashion, those furloughs became terminations. 7 of our clients left our services entirely, making for a huge loss in revenue. 200 employees were let go, myself included. Now, before we get to that, I should point out part of what I did for the company. I was part of the senior development and support team. Each of us was a master of one aspect of the services and products we offered. One of our clients was notorious for attempting to cut out the middleman. When they first signed on with us, the contract had us doing everything, down to assisting their managers with HR concerns, onboarding, and just about everything. We even were in charge of submitting facilities requests. A clogged toilet started with a call to us, which we then routed to the local facilities provider for the restaurant, all while maintaining the guise that we were all a part of the client's internal structure. Anyone the manager may have to talk to was contractually obligated to call themselves Client Services Department X to maintain this illusion. But the secret was quickly revealed after the contract came up for renewal. The client was paying a hefty sum for this white glove treatment. And when it came time to renew the contract, they had different plans. A full third of the services we provided were no longer required. They had watched us do these things and trained an internal staff to do them instead. A third of our services were gone, and with it, a third of our fees. This was the first half of the proverbial straw. The second was an app. The company was converting old stores from an antiquated POS software to a new one. They were different brands and not at all compatible. Understandably, they wanted all sites to use the same system. And there was the problem. The employees in the old system had to be entered by hand into the new one. This was time-consuming and prone to errors. So they wanted a tool to do it automatically. They provided us with a lab, or a fake set of stores on their network to test in. The prototype was developed and demonstrated. The app pulled employee data from the old system, stored it briefly, then fed it into the new system, and finally cleaned up after itself. Suddenly, they backed out. They paid for the labor to produce the prototype, but didn't pay for the project to use it and convert the stores. A week later, we found on a converted store a program with their logo on it. Inside, I found they had taken the code from the prototype, moved it around, changed variable names, added a bunch of nonsense comments, and then slapped their own trademark on it. Management was pissed. We still had a contract with them for another project in the works, upgrading them to Windows 10. This also called for specialized tools we would code and deploy. The tool would handle all the myriad of installations and joinings and importing and exporting and such. Place it on the old computer, and get a folder. Place the folder and app on the new computer, and get a fully upgraded site. It took hours to run, but made the job as easy as monitoring a progress bar. The bosses didn't want another incident, and called a meeting with my team. They asked if it was possible to put a password on the tools so that only we could use them, but have it be done so that even if they looked at the code, they couldn't get the password. I said it was possible, but would take some time and research on my part. And here is where the ball started to roll downhill. I designed a simple password system that involved hashing, and then a Google 2FA token. The password would be salted, hashed, put through a few rounds of salsa 20, then salted and hashed again. The result was held in memory, then the process was repeated a few times more. The end result was compared to a stored value, and a failure would reject the password. The second value we held back earlier was used as the seed for a Google Authenticator, which I and two other high-level techs had on our phones. Password plus Authenticator got you in. The same Authenticator seed was then used to cover up some critical lines in the code. Proper authentication uncovered them, and the program could run. It was a kludge and a half, held together with nothing more than duct tape and righteous thoughts. Anyone with a comp sci degree, math degree, and either a lot of computing power or a lot of patience would be able to crack the whole thing wide open. But it was immune to casual snooping. A week into the upgrade project, the client asks for the password to the tools, and is told that since the tools are only on their machines during the upgrade project and are removed afterwards, there was no need for them to have the password. Of course, we would gladly provide them with a passwordless version for our usual development fees. They elected to allow us to just handle matters. Now here comes the hammer fall. Pandemic, closures, furloughs, and finally, terminations. No one at the administrative level thought to check what my colleagues and I were assigned to when the straws were drawn. All three techs with the Google Authenticator password were let go on the same day. Per corporate policy, our company phones were remotely wiped an hour before we were told of our terminations. The night after my termination, I got a call from the tech who took over my job of doing the upgrades to ask for the password, which I freely gave. The Google code, however, I didn't have. Half an hour later, I am on the phone with a very pissed off director of support, who can't understand why I can't just give him the password. I explain the whole process in detail, and he demands that I rebuild the Google string. I, still pissed about my termination, say I will gladly do so once I am paid for my services. He didn't like this answer and hung up. From my coworkers, I learned that he gave my work computer to one of the few senior support analysts that remained and just told them to get it working. In truth, anyone with a comp sci degree and a little patience could have recovered the seed using the code in the program, but everyone with that know-how was fired. Eventually, the bosses decreed that the project would continue with all 50+ steps being done by hand. Now, instead of 3 agents watching 4 sites each for 2 hours, they each worked on one site at a time for 4 hours apiece. The project went way past the specified completion date, and the client basically got the job done for close to free. Mishandling of data by the analysts led to loss of employee information and worse, credit card and bank account information, which all turned to losses on the client's part. Of course, they turned around and demanded further compensation. 2 months later, I got a call from HR, offering me a job doing the same work, at a 30% pay cut and a position 2 steps below the one I left as. They also reminded me that my refusal would be reported to unemployment. I laughed as I hung up the phone. I have been mean-spirited in this story, but nobody won here. My company and the client suffered, I suffered, and my replacements suffered. Everyone lost. Even if I had the last laugh, it felt a little hollow to me.